My name is Juergen01. I'm a geographer by training. I studied geography, political science, and anthropology, which was very exotic by that time, I have to say. But it proved to be a very interesting combination. I worked on natural hazards. Actually, I started with water systems, with floods. I did a cross-cultural comparison of flood disasters in Spain and Germany. I picked flood disasters in two cultural diverse regions, but also of different centuries, and try to find out what are the critical influencing factors which are of more relevance. Is it really the context, the cultural context, or is it the difference? The difference is higher between, let's say, a flood in the 7th century, in the 20th century in Germany, or in Spain. And to answer that question, the temporal factors were much more influential, meaning a flood in the 7th century in Germany and Spain had more similarities than a flood in Germany in the 7th century and 20th century, for instance. Now, I somehow stuck to this topic. By that time, as a student, I already had a chapter on vulnerability. I didn't know what that meant by that time, how influential this concept will be in the future. But I guess this and a Marie Curie Fellowship I received to work at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis in Luxembourg, where India is also a member country, actually paved the way to my academic career, let's put it that way. So I worked on different aspects on natural hazards, moving slightly more and more toward the social part of it, risk perception, but also political process and preparedness and disaster management, always with a focus on social vulnerability. Now, after returning from Japan, where I lived and worked at Tokyo University, suddenly the global environmental change and climate change became very, very important. And with these concepts, also the concepts of social vulnerability and resilience. And to preach that. I'm telling you not to say, well, not to impress you, let's put it that way, but because because of my studies, I found out how important it is to, to gain credibility, that people believe what you say, and they believe if they know, of course, a little bit. But here, especially in this field, I think it's important to mention some things, because it relates to science and it relates to policy. And so I think I gained scientific credentials, and with publications and so on, and working at Harvard and so on is enough for a scientist to say, well, I think the guy is good, somehow. Now, for a policymaker, it seems like, oh God, another scientist, theoretical, blah, 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 and so forth. So, and this I perceived very, very early, and I returned after being basically all my post-doc time, 10 years abroad. I returned to Germany, and I took the position of a senior science coordinator of a global program on coastal zones, which I did for 5 years, basically. And this, I think, together is the reason why I'm probably sitting here, because if you scientifically coordinate a global program on these critical issues, you have basically multiply what you heard yesterday by 1,000 times, because you have different cultural aspects. I mean, there are different nationalities sitting on the table. You have the language barriers, and some of these problems I hope I can highlight in my talk, but also later during the discussion. So in brief, I also gained, I think, valuable experience in what it actually means bringing science into practice. I mean, or at least into policy. And as you know, a good example is the IPCC report. If you look at the process of the IPCC, scientists also became aware of the fact that their report basically nobody understands, and they have to make a summary for policymakers. And if you look at the entire process of the IPCC, it is actually boundary work at the science policy interface. And being a reviewer of the not only the upcoming IPCC report, but also the special report on disasters and climate change, I would say that was also a very valuable experience in how policymakers really tick. I mean, if they really discuss about words. I mean, in the report, I mean, they calling back home and saying should we agree on that word and so on. If you look at the draft version, policymakers, I mean, some of you might be involved as well, but not everybody is. So just to share this experience, I mean, it's very similar, what we heard yesterday, and. Said that, I think I should congratulate you for this meeting, I have to say, because it touches really two critical aspects. First of all, the topic itself, of integrated coastal zone or river management, but also this science policy or even practice interface, to people who have decision makers in policy and practice, basically the one who set up the programs or the policy, and the other ones who have to execute it. They are responsible. So I think this is a very interesting combination.